Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Professional Writing. I'm Professor Mike, or I almost forgot my name. Today I want to talk to you about the comma, čárka, okay, as well as some other really useful punctuation marks that are, necessary for academic writing. You've written a great paper, a great report, but if you don't use the punctuation effectively, you might even just change the entire meaning of sentences, or just things will just not sound clear at all to the reader. So I would just want to go through a very quick lecture on how to use the comma. I've got a couple of videos I also want to show you. In particular, one video where the woman actually describes how to use the semicolon with however. Okay, this is a very important word in academic writing, however. I can show you, but this woman already has this video prepared and she does it way better than me. So anyways, let's get right into today's lecture. Okay, so of course, and why is the comma so important? So just as I said, you might, completely change the meaning of the message that you're trying to send to the reader, okay? So remember, the comma, of course, it's the smallest break in a sentence, okay? And as a general rule, okay, commas are used basically to aid, like to help, the comprehension and clarity, the clearness, okay? So that you're not vague. Remember that word vague, unclear? Okay, so again, as I said before, just be very, very careful that if you omit, vinechat, vinechanie, omission, or misuse of commas, sorry about that, it should be space, they can completely alter the meaning of a sentence. All right, so here's a great example then. Okay, my three favorite things are eating my family and not using commas, okay? Isn't that terrible? Are eating, comma, my family, comma, and not using commas. Again, another eating one. Time to eat, children. Oh. Look at this, okay? Look at this punctuation here. This is great. A woman without her man is nothing, okay? So here we have the clause, okay? A woman is nothing. But if we change it, add some different punctuation, not necessarily the comma, okay? But here we have a colon, a woman, okay? Without her, man is nothing, okay? So yeah, definitely, this, commas, really make the difference, okay? Especially with regards to clarity. All right, so let's have a look here. So what exactly is the comma? Well, we know it's a, valuable punctuation device because it separates all those elements, all those prvky, those structural elements in the sentence. Everything becomes manageable, okay? So let's have a look here. It's one of the most used or often misused forms of punctuation. Well, why do we use it? Well, okay, so as I said, it separates those elements in the series, okay? My three favorite things, eating, comma, my family, comma, and using commas, okay? But in academic writing especially, it's generally used in introductory phrases, okay? So when we begin, to introduce a subject, we're definitely going to put a comma at the end of the introduction, and then we can go straight into the subject. Okay, so let's have a look here. So if we have a series, okay, just as we talked about with, eating, my family, and using commas, okay, so, if we want to have, if we have those elements, I just want to show you also the Oxford comma. I like to eat apples, oranges, and bananas, okay? Very often when I do a correctura, I use this comma, okay? For a long, long time, people, were taught, well, you don't need to use it. That's okay, but it's more and more common to always put a comma, even before and, okay? You can use a comma before and for sure, okay? And is a conjunction, and I'll show you that in the a later example here. Okay, so the same, the Constitution, Ustava establishes the legislative, right, executive, comma, and judicial branches of government. Okay, so when we have two independent clauses, well, you need to have the comma, okay, for these conjunctions, okay, these, I don't know if you call them spojky or spojenje or something. I don't know how it's called in Slovak. Okay, but these are, the conjunctions basically are going to separate the two ideas in one sentence, okay, whether it's a comparison, or a contrast like but, okay, on the other hand, however, and things like that, okay, so anyway, so with our conjunctions, and, but, for, or, nor, so, yet, okay, these are typical ones. He hit the ball, but he ran toward third base. I like to play tennis with my friends, but I like to run by myself. And with regards to and, well, I want to go to the movies, comma, and I want to go to dinner, okay, because these are two different activities that I would like to do. All right, so with the introductory phrase, okay, so for example, they come right after the clause or the phrase, okay, or words that become before the main clause, the main subject, okay, so let's have a look here then. For example, these are they're common introductory phrases, okay. Words such as like after, although, okay, which is a very typical way, okay, as also can be used as because, okay, just like here, if, since, when, while, and so on. So here we have some great examples. So while I was eating, comma, the doorbell rang, okay, because her alarm clock was broken, comma, she was late for class, okay? So we have two different ideas, okay, two different clauses, okay, separated by the comma. If you are sick, you should see a doctor. And then here, later on, I want to show, however, in academic writing, because it's not always just with a comma, but I want to show you also with a semicolon a little bit later. But usually, in fact, if not always, if you're using, however, as an introductory phrase, it's followed by a comma, okay? It can have a comma on both sides as well, but it can also have the semicolon, however, and comma, but that has to come, later in the sentence, and it's used as a subordinate. Okay, let's have a look here. Right, where are we here? So you need to separate these long prepositional phrases, especially if they're over for words, okay? So having finished eating, he left the table. To get a seat, comma, you'd better, you should come early. After the test, comma, but before dinner, comma, I went swimming. The sun radiating intense heat, comma, we sought shelter in the cafe. All right, and when do we not use the comma? Well, okay, you have to be careful here because I see this quite often. An 18-year-old in California, comma. This is incorrect because an 18-year-old in California is the subject, okay, the predmet, okay? It replaces the osobné zámeno, okay, the personal pronoun. So we cannot have a comma. It's like on, alebo ona, he or she, okay? As well, you don't want to have like, between two verbs, going, running, okay? Or, these compound, predicates like pedestrian zone, pesia zona, okay? So we have two nouns that, become one noun. Okay, so don't put a comma between them. Okay, even, if we have like the main clause, okay, when it's dependent, okay, the subordinate clause, like because. So she was late for class, comma, because her alarm clock was broken, or she was late for class because her alarm clock was broken. This is correct, okay? Actually, this shouldn't be a comma right there. It should be a period. Okay, so I just want to show you a quick cartoon, actually. It's called A Comma Story. I think you'll enjoy it. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes long, but it's got some great examples, of how to use the subordinates and the conjunctions, whether a comma is necessary or not.
Commas are tricky things, especially when subordinates and conjunctions are involved. If you can remember a few basic rules, a simple law of physics, and some common scenarios, you will be able to use commas correctly. I like to think of the different parts of our sentence as characters. Let's meet a few of them. The tiny conjunctions, the mighty subordinates, and the clever comma. Conjunctions are small and nimble. They are words that connect clauses, words, and phrases. You can easily remember the conjunctions by remembering the acronym FANBOYS. The conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Because they're so small, more often than not, they require the help of a comma, but not always. Subordinates, on the other hand, are the WWE heavyweight champions of sentences. They are words that connect two unequal things, dependent and independent clauses. Subordinates make it very clear what is being prioritized in a sentence. Commonly used subordinates are although, because, before, however, unless, and even though. Because subordinates are all about power, they can do a lot of heavy lifting by themselves. But, of course, sometimes even the strongest among us need some help from our clever friends. Because our clever comma is so nice, she often roams her neighborhood looking for some community service to do. Today, as soon as she leaves her house, she sees a subordinate lifting the weight of 2 complete sentences, one on each arm. Bartholomew loves engaging in political debate, even though he usually loses. The comma asks the subordinate if he needs help. Well, we know that subordinates are the WWE heavyweight champions of sentences. They can easily hold the weight of these 2 complete sentences because they are distributed evenly on both arms. So, when the comma asks if it can help, the subordinate is appalled at the idea of needing assistance. No thanks. Maybe next time. So the comma continues on. Soon, she sees a couple of subordinates attempting to lift the weight of sentences directly in front of themselves. Even though Bartholomew loves to sing, he never sings in front of others. The comma asks the subordinates if they need help. They might not want to admit it, but this time the subordinates do need help. Complete sentences weigh quite a bit. Simple physics tells us that it's easier to balance heavy objects if the weight is evenly distributed. So while the subordinates are quite capable of balancing 2 complete sentences when carrying the weight on both sides, they're having trouble picking just one up. The comma rushes over to help the struggling subordinates. But how will she help? When subordinates begin sentences, the comma will place herself directly after the first thought or complete sentence. After helping the subordinates, our comma heroine continues on and spots a conjunction holding the weight of 2 complete sentences. Bartholomew was accepted into the University of Chicago, and he is on the wait list for Stanford University. The comma asks the conjunction if he needs help. Of course he does. Hurry! The comma rushes and places itself before the conjunction. Fanboys aren't as militant as subordinates. For this reason, the commas don't have to fall in line behind the fanboys. Fanboys are courteous creatures. They allow the comma to go ahead of them. Helping others is hard work. On her way home, our comma sees a conjunction holding up the weight of a complete sentence and a fragment sentence. Bartholomew is going to major in molecular biology, or interpretive dance. The now exhausted comma asks the conjunction if he needs help lifting the items. This is one of the rare occasions where a conjunction doesn't need the help of a comma. the conjunction assures the comma that help isn't needed. Which is good for the comma, because by now all it wants to do is go home and rest up for another day of vigilant sentence constructing.
Okay, so actually I've got another video. As I said at the beginning of this week's tutorial, it's a woman actually who talks about using punctuation in academic writing. She explains it very, very well. Anyways, let's go and see what she has to say.
In this video, I will discuss the use of punctuation in academic English settings. In English, there are various punctuation marks used to separate sentences and their elements and to clarify meaning. These include the full stop, the question mark, the exclamation mark, the comma, the colon, the semicolon.
We also call it the period, okay?
Brackets and quote marks. In English, you use full stops to end sentences and commas to separate elements within sentences. This is also common in academic settings. In the following example, you can see how the full stop is used to indicate when one sentence ends and another begins. You can also see that the commas are used to separate different parts of the sentence. The comma before the and is known as the Oxford comma and is used in a sentence to indicate the different elements in a list. Use of the Oxford comma is stylistic, meaning that some style guides demand its use while others don't. Whether or not you use the Oxford comma is therefore generally up to you. The example sentence also includes a colon. The colon is used to start a list of items in a sentence.
Okay, so remember, if you have a list of items, okay, well, here we are. So it describes experimental learning as a cycle composed of 4 stages, okay? So we don't need to put a comma here, but we can put the colon, okay? And then after each item, then we stick the comma, okay? You know, as well as our Oxford comma.
In academic English, you are unlikely to use question marks or exclamation marks in your writing. Question marks are uncommon in academic writing because the person reading your text is unable to answer you if you ask them a question in your writing. It is also not common in academic practice to include rhetorical questions in your writing. Exclamation marks are not usually used in academic writing because you need to be more objective in an academic setting. Use of an exclamation mark usually conveys emotions such as surprise or amazement, making your writing less objective. You are therefore encouraged to rephrase your sentence so that it does not require you to use an exclamation or question mark at the end. This means that you will almost always end an academic sentence with a full stop.
Yeah, and that's really true actually, because your academic paper is serious. Okay, so this is a different style of writing. It's not an email or, you know, or an SMS where you put emojis and you know, things like that. So a question mark does not generally go in. You know, it's never used actually in an academic paper, as well as the question mark. Although sometimes I've seen it. But in general, we don't use any rhetorical questions, okay? Because the reader, you know, the person reading it doesn't, you know, is looking for answers and not expecting to be asked a question.
For example, instead of saying, "The results in this experiment are very good because it shows the medical treatment works," you can say, "The results in this experiment indicate that the medical treatment significantly reduces the symptoms of the disease." In the first sentence, the writing focuses on the fact that you think the results are great, while the second sentence is more objective, focusing on the main findings rather than your opinion. This makes the writing more objective. The semicolon is used to join 2 independent clauses that are related. Look at the example in the following sentence. "I like coffee. My friend prefers tea." In this sentence, there are 2 independent clauses. Each of these clauses can be a separate sentence. However, because the 2 ideas are related to each other, I have used a semicolon to join the 2 independent clauses together. Semicolons are rarely used correctly by students in their academic writing, causing much frustration for lecturers. As such, it is better not to use a semicolon unless you are certain you can use it correctly.
And she's very right, okay? You have to be very careful with this, okay? Because I've seen semicolons in places that are just not, necessary at all, okay?
For example, if you use the same sentence as before, you can write it as, I like coffee, full stop. My friend prefers tea, full stop. This is an easier option if you are unsure as to whether you are using the semicolon correctly. Brackets are used to add additional information in order to clarify the meaning of a particular component of a sentence. This information is usually not essential to the main point, but adds extra useful information. Therefore, the information in the brackets can be removed and the main point of the sentence remains the same. An example is shown on the screen. In this example sentence, the author has restated the statistics in a different format to make it easier to understand for the reader. If, however, the information in the brackets was removed, the main point of the sentence would remain the same. You will encounter quote marks in academic writing whenever an author's direct words are used in someone else's writing. In these cases, the quotes are always accompanied by references stating where the information came from. It is important not to overuse quotes in your writing. Quotes are generally used when the author is particularly famous in the field or when the use of the author's direct words would make a person's argument stronger. For example, the following sentence uses a quote to directly reference the idea of a particularly famous scholar in the field. Quotes are also used in research settings as evidence or results in qualitative research studies. In these cases, the quotes do not normally have references, as the quotes are the data obtained in the specific study or experiment. The following sentence shows an example of this use of a quote to highlight the direct words of a participant in a specific program.
Okay, and now I want you to pay particular attention to the next video. This is a great explanation of how to use the semicolon, especially with however, okay? Let's have a look at it.
Hello, my name's Kerry Lewis and I'm a member of the MrProf.com writing team. Today I'm going to talk about how to use the semicolon with however and similar words. However is a transition word or a conjunctive adverb and it shows how ideas relate to one another. Let's read these two sentences. It's time to go. I'm eating my breakfast. Both of these sentences make sense by themselves, but we can't see how the ideas connect. Now let's add the word however. It's time to go. However, I'm eating my breakfast. The word however now shows how eating my breakfast relates to the idea of time in the first sentence. Where you place the word however can affect the meaning of the sentence. It's time to go. I am, however, eating my breakfast. Placing the word however between am, which is now written in full, and eating now emphasises that this is an unfinished action. Let's read the final sentence. It's time to go. I'm eating my breakfast, however. Here, however is tacked to the end of the sentence like an afterthought. Now notice the punctuation. However is always separated from the other words with a comma. From commas to semicolons, let's see how we can use this word and others with a semicolon.
Yeah, this is where...
You'll recognise the first sentence, and the second sentence is the same, except it has a semicolon. I've deleted the full stop, replaced it with a semicolon, and I've changed the capital letter H to a lowercase. And I've kept the comma. There are other transition words as well, and they work in exactly the same way. You might want to pause and read this list of transition words. Whilst you're reading, think about the words that you use the most. Now we'll look at some example sentences. These are some of the most commonly used transition words. I played tennis. Meanwhile, my friend was eating strawberries. I studied incredibly hard for the test. Consequently, I passed with 98%. I endured the first half hour of a boring film. Finally, I turned off the television. Learning how to use these words with a semicolon and comma is an easy way to impress your teacher and an examiner. It's worth noting one important point. If the transition word is between a subject, who or what the sentence is about, and a verb, mostly doing words, no comma or semicolon are needed. For example, he then went home. Who went home? He, so he is the subject. What did he do? Went, so went is the verb. Then is from this list, and because it's in the middle of the subject and verb, no punctuation marks are needed. Finally, the word however can mean something else. It can mean no matter how.
Yeah, this is very important, okay? It's like, however hard I try, okay? So it means no matter how, even though I put in a lot of effort, I fail, okay? So anyways, I'll let her describe this example here.
When it means no matter how, it becomes an adverb. Let's look at some examples. However hard you try, in other words, no matter how hard you try, it won't make a difference. However, no matter how beautiful you think your garden is, mine is better. However, no matter how you look at it, you'll find nothing wrong. As it says here, with all the above examples, however means no matter how. It's an adverb, not a transition word, so you don't need any commas. I hope that you enjoyed.
I hope, hopefully that was helpful to you. That's how we use however, okay? Generally, it's followed by a comma on both sides, but not always. So as if it's used as an adverb, okay, prislovka, okay, no matter how. One final thing, okay, the comma in Slovak is also a little bit different than in English, okay? You have a word called je, and usually you put a comma after it. Je, which is that in English, there's generally no comma after it, okay? All right, hopefully this tutorial on using punctuation will be helpful to you. If you have any questions, of course, just send me an email. I've got plenty of exercises, plenty of material that I can send to you if you want to look through it. Okay, guys, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.